And welcome to another Round the Rotary podcast with me, your host, JP Warren. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We know you have a choice of podcasts out there, and your time is valuable, and we appreciate you tuning in today to this podcast. I got to start off by saying that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specializes in project engineering and well site supervision, all disciplines in the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. And again, you can find Round the Rotary on whatever you're listening to right now. If you'd like to leave a review, tell us what you think. We'd appreciate that. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and we just started on Clubhouse, and I have no idea what that means. But we'll figure it out, I'm sure, by the time this is released. And with us in the studio today, we have William Standiford, the VP of Sales and Marketing at Access ESP. Did I get that right, the last name?
Yeah, sounds good.
I like that. All right. So, man, thanks for coming in today. I appreciate you joining us. And again, this is not your first podcast, apparently. This is your second one. You did a previous one on sales.
Yeah. So I think these are the wave of the future. So great to be here with you today. Looking forward to talking about stuff.
Man, I spoke to someone today who, Sean McCoy, who is over at OGGN. He's like, I've been listening to podcasts since 2008. I was like, I never knew there were podcasts in 2008.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty impressive. So let's just get us kicked off. I mean, you and I were talking a little bit earlier before we started came into the studio to start recording, and I just think there's so many different topics we can go down, so many different rabbit holes. So I'm looking forward to getting this kicked off. So why don't you just start us off and tell us about your background a little bit. Where are you from? Where are you at now?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dallas, and I was actually had a brush up with oil and gas very early on in high school with the SP Junior Explorer Club. But after that, I never really thought much about it. I was in the Army for 4 years. Got out, sort of started my life, and as I was finishing up my first round of college, these Schlumberger recruiters came around campus, and I remember my friends and I were sort of like Schlumberger. This sounds French.
That's
what are these guys all about? And so these guys basically talked to us, showed us a lot of the new technology in oil and gas, and I was really hooked. And so joined Schlumberger, worked as a field engineer. A lot of deep water projects, mostly in the Gulf of Mexico, Trinidad, Norway.
What do you think about that, working offshore? It was kind of your first little stint.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. So actually, when they hired me, at the end of the hiring process, the person hiring me said, look, you got two ways to get to work. You can either get in a pickup truck or you can ride in a helicopter. Which one do you prefer? And I said, well, I want to ride in a helicopter. And so that's how I made my decision to start working offshore.
That was it? Just the
helicopter. I was excited. So
we were watching I think we were watching a rock movie with my daughter and my wife, and we were watching, and there was a helicopter in it. And I was like, hey, Dad used to take that to get to work. And she's like, what? Like, she's 7 years old. She's like, no way. I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, are you scared? I was like, yes.
Every time.
Every single time you're scared. Because you watch that egress video, it's like, first off, the chopper goes down. I'm not going to be, Anyway, so.
It's not nearly as glamorous as they think either, is it? So loaded up 14 people in the back.
It sounds cool. It's like, who gets the hell? It's like, it's not as fun as you think. You got to get there at 3 a.m.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You got to sleep in your car for a little bit.
Weigh your luggage.
You got to do that whole routine. So you're working offshore.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So I was working offshore doing MWD and LWD, a lot of logging and petrophysics with Schlumberger. And about this time, this is the late 90s, we were sort of transitioning from sort of integrated computers to personal computers. And so a lot of the things that we used to have to do in town, we could start doing offshore. And I came across this software for petroleum geomechanics, basically helps solve problems related to kicks, losses, wellbore stability. And we deployed this technology on the project. And I just thought, man, this is great. It was my first sort of exposure to, not just doing a job for the customer, but helping the customer solve problems. And so I was so enamored with this technology. I actually left the company and joined the company that made that software. It was called Knowledge Systems. I actually thought it was a much bigger company. This is my first lesson in oil and gas. So when you're 25, you don't leave Schlumberger, the number one OFS provider, to join a six-man software company based in Sugar Land, Texas. So
wow.
In hindsight, very risky, but I believed in the technology, and so I stayed there for several years.
Real quick, what did you like about it? Did you like the actual the technology side of the product, or did you like actually the solution side, where actually solving problems for the customer?
Yeah, I think the latter more, right? So sort of the heavy lifting around learning all the mathematics and things to deliver the solution
Right.
was sort of the hard work. But I love being able to answer questions, really solve challenges for customers. It's very gratifying.
Okay.
So I think a lot of times there are jobs where you sort of just do what you're told, get your ticket signed at the end of the day. But this is a case where it felt very good for the customer to sort of need you. And so very early on, I was exposed to this notion that, creating customer value can not only be, commercially profitable, but also very satisfying.
Yeah. Per
Right?
part. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
helping them
Yeah.
do something they couldn't do before. And so very intrigued by that sort of use of technology.
Yeah, no, we had Brandon Buzzard on with the Lamore Corporation. We just released his podcast right when we're recording this. We're recording this on February 3rd, 2021. And he's kind of the same. He's driven by the same thing. He kept on jumping to these new technology or finding new technology to solve problems for the customer.
Exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing that I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, exactly. I think everybody's wired a little bit different.
Right.
In my current role or when I'm more around customers and things like that, I always think about, what are the dimensions that make this product or service, attractive to the customer? Because I think if you can really understand where you're bringing value to the customer, it helps you whether you're in sales or operations or R&D. You always have to be focused on, solving the customer's challenge, fixing the customer's, pain,
Making their job a little bit easier.
making their job a little bit easier. And you can really tell when you've done that versus just sort of providing an average product or
Well,
service.
how did this go at 25 years old, going from Schlumberger to Knowledge Systems? I mean, what was you saw this technology, you really liked it, you really thought it was exciting, and was it a conversation they had with you or you had it with them? I mean, how did you switch and pursue this?
This is actually kind of an interesting story, but a friend of mine and I, a friend with much better education than me, he's a PhD geologist. We were actually leaving to start our own company. So we had put on the back of a napkin
At 25?
this software. Yeah.
Okay.
This software, and we kind of said, look, customers really want this. And we feel like that, the big company is not really going to be that excited to deliver it because it's below the radar of what's commercially interesting to them. And so we were leaving to start our own company. And the plan was I would leave first. We had this whole plan laid out. And one of the sales reps for the small software company found out about it. And the owner called me and said, William, you do not want to start your own company. You're way too young. You know nothing about business. You will lose everything.
He just got done with the Army and got done working offshore at 25. You know everything.
Yeah, and a family, right, with 2 kids. And so he actually said, look, come join our business. We'll give you an equity position in the business, help us grow the business. And, that way it'll give you an opportunity to learn about what it takes to actually, run a company, because there's particularly small businesses, as you know, require a lot of different skills, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to take the trash out.
Yeah, actually, I just took recycling out this morning.
That's right.
Yep.
You're also your own IT professional. Often you work in HR and legal and occasionally tax. And so it was a great experience to get to go to a small company with a more experienced entrepreneur and sort of, get trained in how the logistics work and as well develop my skills really, again, solving these customer challenges.
So first off, you're right. I think, when you have a small company, the worst part is you are your own IT group.
That is true.
Absolute worst. It's like little stuff like setting up your email view. You're like, all right, here goes next half a day figuring this out. So you went over there and it's kind of a senior vice president of operations role, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, as you said, it's a small company, so you're wearing several hats. And right now with the operations, but you're also kind of developing some problem-solving sales, marketing skills.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
So the business basically had 2 pieces. So we had this software piece where, again, we would sell software to the customer, petrotechnical software to the customer. But a lot of our customers wanted us to provide the solutions from the software as a service. And that was really where my expertise was. And so we really focused a lot on building a consulting business around this software product. And so we kind of talk about, there are cases where you're selling the fishing pole to the customer, and there are other cases where the customer either wants you to teach them how to fish or either fish for them.
Some more customers.
And so again, I think the customer value is the same, right? The dimensions of value the customer is trying to get, but sort of being flexible enough to provide that solution to the customer in the different ways they want it is one of the things that really made us successful. And I think a lot of the things in sales and marketing work the same as they do in consulting, or as long as you stay focused on providing that value to the customer.
Did you enjoy going from a company like Schlumberger to a six person operation at 25?
Yeah,
What was that like for you?
it was shockingly different. And again, with a family, lots of questions to answer around health insurance and dental insurance and these things, but also very exciting. So I think people that are considering this kind of move, I think people that have been through small companies and big companies, we talk all the time about the incompatibility between the two types of people that grow up in those organizations.
What do you mean by that?
I think that there's a notion that if you grew up in a small company, you're very used to being empowered. You're sort of resistant to policies and procedures and are more groomed towards flexibility.
Right.
In large institutions like Schlumberger, Halliburton, where I've been at both, obviously you have to be much more aligned with policies and procedures, dealing with risk management protocols, and a much slower cycle. So, but I would say that if you're considering a move one way or the other, people are generally compatible so long as you sort of recognize in your own mind, hey, it's going to be different here. So when I transitioned from Halliburton to my current role, that was one of the big adjustments, right? As well, I wasn't managing as many people and as much money in terms of like budget sizes. I actually had a lot more freedom in terms of like, what I do with my time, what I put on my personal expense account, and how to approach customers and sales, right? So I'm not following the institution's plan. We're basically making the plan of how we're going to interface with our customers in the market.
Well, that's kind of what I want to get into right now, because your background is Schlumberger. You're working offshore, then you go to this operations role where you're still kind of wearing a couple different hats, right? What we just talked about, and then you go to Halliburton. So I'm curious on how your career evolved to where you found yourself in these operational roles or these business growth roles to kind of getting into sales and marketing.
Yeah. So the company Knowledge Systems, we built the company up, and then Halliburton acquired us in 2008. So that's how I got to Halliburton. I didn't change jobs; they changed on top of me. And in the larger organization, one of the big advantages is they give you opportunities to develop yourself. And so, I was put in roles in operations and R&D. I was given an opportunity to work overseas.
Where'd you go overseas?
I was based in London as a region manager for Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa for a couple of years.
There are so many worse places to be in the oil and gas industry than London.
It's so true. It's absolutely true. So, and I think we all knew it. So it was a great assignment. Company did a fantastic job taking care of us over there. And I think they really built up a broad set of skills, which big companies are very good at doing that, right? By moving you between different roles. And so,
well, some are. I mean, there's some companies out there that don't understand the value of taking their personnel and putting them in different roles and having them learn different disciplines. I mean, but that's awesome. I think that's great that Halliburton allows you to actually train in different fields and learn different skill sets.
Yeah, they did a great job with that, and I think it builds very strong sort of general purpose leaders, again, that are made very well for small companies. So when I had the opportunity to come to Access ESP, I came in through some of my Schlumberger connections, and you mentioned the current role I'm in is in sales and marketing.
Yes.
I think my general purpose skill set is what makes me, available to drop into that kind of role, because I haven't been in sales and marketing my whole career, but because I understand the mechanisms and procedures, I understand how to prosecute a business acquisition process. And I think more importantly, because I understand how to, look at a customer and try and understand what their needs are and where our products and services meet their needs. That's what sort of makes me a good fit for this role, and that's why they asked me to do it.
So, William, tell me about this switch right now. So I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile right now, and it's you get. So first off, you go from Knowledge Systems, which is a small, and then it's acquired by Halliburton. So now, boom, you're back into another large company.
Into huge.
And that was okay for you.
11 years. I loved every minute of it. So great company.
Well, that's great that you're able to switch between such a large organization and a small organization and go back and forth. Tell me about how you kind of jumped into the Access ESP role in March of 2020, when pretty much one of the worst times I can imagine to what's interesting too, I've talked to a lot of people on this podcast, and there's a lot of role switches and role position changes and I guess career path moves like in March and April, May, and to me that's like mind-boggling. That's when the uncertainty out there was tremendous. That's when it was a dumpster fire, and for people to move during those times, it's fascinating to me. Which I'm not taking anything away. I respect it. I respect the hell out of it.
Maybe a little bit lucky.
Well, that doesn't matter if it's luck or whatever it is. Right. So tell me about how you went from Halliburton and got this. Jumped into the vice president of sales and marketing in an international. Well, tell me about this, and then let's get into Access ESP a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things I would say is this opportunity came to me by way of my Schlumberger alumni network. Okay. So I think in oil and gas, in particular, it's so important that you maintain good relationships with friends, colleagues, leaders, not just people you like, but people because it's mutually beneficial. So. The chairman of the board for Access ESP, I was actually meeting him to talk about another startup company that he had and with directional drilling tools called IsoDrill. Had me to shop. We're looking at all these tools and fantastic, talking business because I'm mostly a drilling guy, some earth science, but mostly drilling. Okay. I would call myself a drilling guy. And so we're looking at this, and he's like, we're just not ready for you here, William. But I know another company.
What does that mean, not ready?
Yeah. For so you? When you're starting up a company, they go through various stages of incubation. Sometimes when the R&D of a company is not done, they're not actually ready to bolt on sort of commercial and operational people, right? So what it means is they have another year or so of R&D, of basically bench testing and qualification to do before they're ready for people to actually go out and run it. Right. So I'm the run it guy. So if you give me a directional drilling tool, I'm going to go find someone that's going to let us run it in the hole and drill with it. And so if you're not ready to do that, by the way, delete me. Don't contact me by LinkedIn. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, so they weren't ready basically. But the fit was strong, right? We hadn't caught up in a lot of years. It had been many years since I had interacted. And so as we were catching up on our careers, and he said, but this other company, needs someone like you immediately. And so again, through our social connections, he basically plugged me into the CEO of Access ESP, Dave Malone, another Schlumberger alumni. And very quickly, we consummated my position there. We didn't actually know COVID was starting. We were just thinking about it. Seems like 10 years ago, but it was only, a year ago. And what's funny is he was actually going on his first vacation in like 3 years. And so what actually forced the hire so quickly, it could have been delayed by a month or 6 weeks as we negotiated. Right. Like he calls me and says, William, I'm going on vacation next week and I want this thing tied up, which if you know a lot of people that have worked at Schlumberger, this is one of the things that's in their sort of modus operandi is sort of get it done. And so he was like, we're doing this week. I'm cutting all the red tape, get in here and let's get the deal done. And so, we did the deal. He went on vacation. I started, and basically, as you know, March hit, the lockdowns hit.
Yep.
And so basically got in at a time when, companies were, even companies that were expanding and very healthy like we are, I think everybody was pulling in and asking ourselves very difficult questions.
It was let's bolt the hatches down. Let's
right.
see what this looks like. Let's survive it. What was, I guess, you're at a company for Halliburton for almost 12 years. And what was the main motivator? Was it just the desire for something new? Was it a desire to push a new product? I mean, what was the main forces for you to, I guess, leave after almost 12 years to go to this new opportunity?
Yeah. So I think it's always opportunity driven. So again, Halliburton and I had a very long and successful sort of working relationship together.
Right.
And we just came to a point to where, my career wasn't going where I wanted it to go inside Halliburton, and they were ready to make some changes too. And so totally mutually beneficial sort of parting of ways. And when I was back out on the market, I really asked myself, do I want to start my own company? I've looked at a lot of different opportunities.
Okay.
But this one in particular really struck me because it has a very strong value proposition in terms of, the product was developed by customers. So anytime customers ask you to build something.
Well, tell us about Access ESP a little bit, because for those out there that are not familiar with it, you're talking about the customer building the product.
Yeah.
Give us a brief kind of background on ESP and what you all provide.
I'm going to do my best here. Like I said, I'm a drilling guy, so I've been learning a lot over the last year. So when a well, a lot of times a well will flow under sort of natural reservoir pressure, right? So you drill a hole and the oil flows out of it. In other cases, we need to provide artificial lift to get the oil to flow out of it. And you can do that with things like sucker rods. Mm-hmm. But one of the most popular ways to provide artificial lift is to put an electric submersible pump down hole. So this is a an electric pump. So when you run the production tubing inside the casing,
Right.
an induction motor and the pump are at the bottom. And this basically propels the fluid upward, gives you tremendous control, fidelity on the reservoir performance in these things. So all of that is great. You say, wow, this is great news. We should run this on every well. But like most things in the oil field, equipment fails. And
Right.
so when the ESP fails after a few years, typically you have to come back in with a rig to pull the production tubing because you need the rig's, crown
Horsepower.
horsepower
Right.
to pull the production tubing and replace the ESP. And this can be very costly. And so ESPs, while they have a lot of great characteristics, this is one of their negative characteristics. So
They got to bring an entire rig to pull.
that's
to
right.
pull-
That's
pull-
right.
yeah.
And sometimes it's not just the cost of the rig, it's also the loss of production. So we call that deferred production. So if you're down for 30 days while you're waiting for the heavy intervention, you've lost the oil production
Right.
value if you're the operator. And so what would be very attractive for the operators is if they had an easier way to switch out these ESPs. And
Without
so-
without bringing the rig in.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And so Access ESP, we build what's called a wireline retrievable ESP deployment system, or a Go Rigless ESP deployment system is what we call ours. And you can think of it sort of like a dock. Think of it like a USB port that we put at the bottom of the production tubing.
Okay.
And so once we put that dock at the bottom of the production tubing, from that point forward, you can convey in and out the motor and the ESP with just wireline or slickline.
Okay.
And so you have these very durable components, the power system, the production tubing, they may last up to 20 years. And our docking station, which also may last up to 20 years. And so during that time now, if you want to just change the pump because you don't like its configuration, or you want to change it because it failed, or you want to change the parameters, you can basically convey this in and out with wireline or slickline. And what we've seen is because we do these economic value analysis for each of the projects for our customers, because this is more expensive than a traditional installation. But what we've seen is that this typically can add $5 to $15 million of MPV per well.
Okay.
So like over a 10-year period, we looked at some wells, some offshore wells in a recent project, and we were saving the customer about $30 million per well in intervention costs over 10 years, and another $20 million in deferred production. And so basically we're bringing $50 million per well of value to this asset by not having to sort of go in with a rig and make that transition of equipment. We can make it more easily with slickline or wireline.
So that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to say it sounds like such an innovative new
Yeah.
technology, new processes, and it sounds like something that's forefront and new. And as you said,
Absolutely, yeah.
I was going to say, well, how do you? I mean, during times like this, because right now, again, times like this, everyone's kind of wants
Yeah.
to operate how they used to. They don't want to really test new things out. But I guess I was going to say, what's the buy-in like with I guess trying this new technology out there or this product? But it sounds like you just answered the question right there.
Yeah, the buy-in has really been good. So again, this was customer-driven development initially by ConocoPhillips,
Okay.
and then Chevron and Total are our other two big sponsors, and we've had multiple deployments with them, offshore Angola and North Slope of Alaska, and through their support and continued innovation over the last 10 years, we have enough run history, reliability history now that we're starting to see adoption with Equinor and Eni and lots of other assets, Saudi Aramco. Because
So
the technology,
it's very international.
that's
based.
right. That's
Okay.
right. That's right. It's this kind of technology really lends itself to people that have a longer view on their asset
Okay.
value and profitability. So if you're in an asset and your sort of payback period and sort of value horizon is 2 to 3 years, trying to get my money back, these types of technologies, probably aren't for you.
Do you see this change? I mean, that mentality of going in there, putting a couple holes in, flipping it 2 to 3 years. That's not here anymore. So do you see kind of the mindset of, I guess, the U.S. domestic companies? I guess the opportunity being there more, because I feel like how operators manage their assets now is going to change. It's going to be from a growth to a profit mindset.
Yeah.
So do you see this kind of being an opportunity to service more of the domestic market?
I sure hope so. I hope so. Again, it really, I think that one of the sort of phrases that I'll take from Halliburton that I learned is we used to talk a lot of times that we're a reflection of the way our customers buy from us. And so I think when we're selling, we sort of want to project this is how we think the customer should buy from us, right? So for instance, I think this technology would be a great fit in North America. I think a better stance is to be a listener in sales and marketing and say, I'm a reflection of the way the customer wants to buy from me. And so if the customer wants to buy this type of technology and it fits whatever their value propositions are for North America,
Right.
I think that will happen naturally more than us sort of trying to force it into that market. And so the approach we've really taken is, again, being responsive to customers where this technology creates the highest value. And so that's where you see a lot of our deployments are offshore for dry trees. It's just really where the economics fit for this in the customer's current mindset anyway.
So how has that been for you? I guess I guess the majority of opportunities are international markets.
That's right.
You're talking about, Angola, Saudi, all these, foreign,
Yeah.
international locations. And right now we're in kind of a lockdown. Travel's being restricted,
Yeah.
and this seems like kind of it's one of those things where we have to sit across the table and actually show data, show the benefits, show the results of Access ESP. But that being said, I mean, how are you seeing, I guess, the speed of engagement or the speed of the sell or the selling process for these international, I guess, customers when you're stuck at the house?
Yeah, it's been a huge change. So I think historically, again, we would have a sales opportunity and, we would immediately want to fly to the customer's location,
Yeah.
bring an engineering team, put the maps out, the schematics, really sort of dig into it. And, the sales process is really transformed as our customers, the initial reaction was do nothing, we'll just wait and this will pass. And I think about 6 months ago, our customers started opening from that and saying, look, we have to go back to work
Yeah.
one way or another. And so, we've used a variety of technologies. I wouldn't subscribe to one being
Right.
better. I don't know yet, but whether it's Slack or Teams or GoToMeeting, all the other stuff like Dropbox and Google Drive, I think what we learned is that you need to be proficient in that entire constellation of
You have
technologies
all
if you're a
all
service
that
company.
stuff in your
Yeah, because you don't
toolbox.
know what the customer is going to be using.
Right.
But everything that we used to do in person, we found a way now to do online. And I would say a lot more dependency on being really savvy with the technology, but also being administratively savvy.
Yeah.
And so email can't be something that you get to after you meet with a customer. I think previously we prioritized face-to-face customer engagement, semi or remote synchronous engagement like phone calls
Yeah.
and texts and things like that. And you viewed email, certainly Slack and Teams was like, oh my gosh, this is a corporate meeting. It's no value here,
Right.
at least as a salesperson, right? And so we've really flipped that on its head now. So we don't have the direct customer engagement anymore. Most of them aren't in their offices.
Yeah.
We can't get to them. So now, when we start our day, our priority is really around our asynchronous communication mechanisms, Teams, Slack, these sorts of things, because those are places where distributed customer teams will have been working overnight. And so you may come up overnight, for instance, we have a project in Brunei and find that, some simulations were run for an upcoming well. And so we need to do our part here in the States, turn that analysis back and get it back to them. If you're not able to do that, you're just not going to be able to sell and run your business effectively. And so that's been a huge transition
I
for
would
us.
assume it kind of would probably slow it down too, because I mean, when you're dealing with international markets, such as
Yeah.
when you fly across the pond and all that stuff, I mean, you're on the same time zone, you're sitting across the
Yeah.
table. The culture differences, kind of, or the culture similarities, you can kind of manage, deal with. I mean, the language barrier and all that stuff. So, has it slowed down? I guess the selling process.
Yeah. I think for us, again, on the on the drilling side, I was used to very short, sometimes even transactional sales processes.
Yes.
So on the production side, we really benefit from a protracted sales cycle anyway. It could be a very long sales cycle for our product, only as short as 6 months, sometimes as long as 18 months or 2 years.
Okay.
But to your point, it has slowed it down. I don't always view that as a bad thing though, because I think that it gives the parties sometimes an opportunity to be contemplative and consider the other person's position. So again, if you and I were in a room and we were working on a problem together, I think the tendency would be that we would want to resolve that problem and head to lunch or get a cup of coffee. And when it's asynchronous, you have the benefit of knowing that sometimes your counterpart may not see this for several hours or whatever, and so you can consider things you wouldn't. You can engage with another team member. For us, we spend a lot of time on what we call sort of sizing or configuration of our system, and so we see a lot, actually, an improvement in engagement across our peer group in terms of people asking for recommendations. Hey, the customer thought that they wanted this. What have you guys seen? And so they'll come back, and so while it has slowed it down, I think that the quality of the work has probably actually improved, even if it's taken us a little bit longer to get the
And
work done.
and that trust is kind of being built too,
It
right
is. It
there.
is. I think the network is stronger. I would say that what is most difficult, I think, for those of us that like human interaction. So lots of BD guys. I'll
Yep.
call myself BD guy now because that's my current
I'm
role.
a BD guy
The
too,
BD
brother.
guy
I
role.
love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it
we
interacting
love
with
the human
people.
interaction. I think what is really difficult to do electronically is this trust that you mentioned. So I
Yeah.
think that we're very much encultured to sit across the table and make a determination about whether or not we believe or trust the person across from us. And when you're doing things electronically and asynchronously, you don't have that. And so you really have to build that up over time. And that's where I think these more contemplative moves are important because by the same token, if you make a mistake, it's not as easy to take that person out to lunch,
Oh yeah.
which all BD guys have done, right? And say, oh, wow, we didn't get that right. You're not going to have that luxury. And so if you have a failure, whether it's process equipment or whatever, it's going to take you a lot longer to recover from that because there's just no human tethering between the parties to trust each other.
So that's been a big shift right now in the sales process. Is not in your situation not be able to get in front of customers, even for ours
Yeah.
situation not get in front of customers, whether they're domestic, international. How have you seen? I guess where do you see? I guess the evolution of sales and the sales tactics or strategy. I guess moving forward in this 2021 environment.
Yeah. So when I took over this role, we sort of did a review. Good friend of mine who maybe you want to have on the show, Bill Diggins, who runs Kitatech Consulting here in town, is a longtime market strategist, and I've used Bill for over 20 years to help me on projects. So he and I sort of sat down and said, look, let's look at what was taken from us, and let's look at what we have from a business development perspective. And so things that were taken from us, trade shows,
Yeah.
international travel, lots of client entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
We're literally sobbing as we're making this list, right? So, wow, these things are all taken from us. So how do we create customer engagement? And what we did was we developed a plan that was much more focused on our digital Marcom activities. And
Okay.
so I think historically we used again things like LinkedIn, Facebook, even WhatsApp, Twitter. We use these things sort of as a secondary or even tertiary
I
tactic.
never got on LinkedIn before COVID.
Me either.
I really didn't. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, before I started over here, I just was like, I'm okay. There's
Yeah.
other. It's not sexy for me. There's nothing going on in there.
Yeah.
But now it's like I check that more than any other app.
Yeah, if you have people out here, I think that are business development professionals, leaders, which I know you do have listening to, particularly people looking for a job. LinkedIn is not just a place to post your resume. It is the only what I would consider truly professional digital space you have out there to promote your product, promote your brand, promote yourself, and to network in a time when it's very difficult to create personal networking. I mean, again, trade shows used to be, are the gold standard.
And you'd always bump into someone.
That's
Yeah.
it, right? And it might be in the lobby bar, might be at a dinner, might be at the booth, might
Yeah.
be in a plenary session. And so again, I think that, what I would tell people is you really have to take stock of what was taken from you and reposition yourself and reposition your Marcom investments and things you're going to do. The other thing that we did is again, while we're small or not giant like
Right.
Halliburton or Schlumberger, we're a very international company. And so we really also placed a premium on local content close to the customer. And that's still a work in progress for us. But historically, where we'd say, well, I'll fly in and check on this customer once per month,
Yeah.
and you might have this with BD people covering a region, hey, I'll drive by there and I'll check in. And so they're servicing. What we're doing is we're shifting some of our investments that we were putting in those traditional Marcom activities and saying, you know what, I need an engineer in charge. I need a desk engineer. I need a sales resource. And I can't count on the ability to travel, so I need them close to the customer, even though that expense may look, outsized compared to our historical
Right.
thinking, right?
But it's a new world. Though.
It's a new world. And so you need someone that is, we were moving away from putting people on customer sites because we were going all remote. And a lot of people, I think, thought, wow, this pandemic has made us even more remote. What I would say is that you can never forget, particularly for technical products, you still need people close to the customer, running simulations, talking about designs, collaborating, getting the work done. And you're going to need that to offset some of the digital sort of tools that we're using to compensate as well.
All right. So you brought up a good segue right there when it comes to LinkedIn and all that stuff.
Yep.
And we discussed previously, what does it take getting a job then versus what do you feel it takes getting a job now?
Yeah.
So kind of historically, kind of what did you feel? Well, number one, people are dealing with a larger pool of applicants.
Sure.
Right now. There's jobs are more scarce, even though it's kind of turning around a little bit. So I guess previously, what do you think people needed to get a job that you saw in your leadership positions versus what people need now this day and age?
So again, the previous sort of 20 years up to this year, I think we had a relatively straightforward path for hiring, right? And so at the bottom, there's sort of just application, right? And the traditional HR systems. This was done through meeting with recruiters or plugging in through online postings and things like that. And you send in your resume, you might get a call, you might not. On the higher and middle end, we also had a lot more recruiting activity. And so if you were a mid-career professional or executive like myself, you were probably constantly getting pinged by various recruiters, that were making a fee off you. And so there was some motivation there to match up the things. And that worked pretty well. So I think it worked well for lots of people around. It worked well as a hiring manager for me, and also worked well for lots of people I knew that were seeking jobs. I haven't had a lot of job changes, so I'm not the best about how it was working, but I saw people get placed relatively easily.
And it seemed like historically, I don't know where I'm going to go with this, I don't want to think, but it seemed like historically, kind of what you were saying, it was less energy, personal energy, active way to find work. When you talk to people, you submit your resume. That's not really. It wasn't really building a brand. It wasn't really engaging with people. It wasn't really networking. So I guess it was a lot of like. It wasn't sit there and wait, but it was more like, okay. It was
more passive.
It was more passive. Exactly.
It was more passive. And I think, too, people also heavily valued pedigrees and, again, historical sort of hiring measures. So a lot of emphasis placed on school and GPA. I remember sitting at the big companies in meetings where we would have, histograms of the attributes of engineering teams and things like this, and people sort of pointing to one school or the other. And again, I think those things work well. So let's talk about what I think works now.
Yes.
So number one, your network is everything. Because we've limited social contact and some of these other matters, if whether you're an entry-level hire, mid-career, or top, I think that your social network is everything. So people are going to be a lot more comfortable with people they know. Secondarily, they want people that know someone they know.
So networking is everything. So right now, how would people, I guess, be effective when it's strengthening and creating new contacts?
Yeah. So one is, again, through your social network. So I would encourage you to get out and meet with people that may not have a job and just have a coffee.
Yes.
Visit businesses and get tours of their shop. These are all very effective ways. Participate where you can in industry events. So we were at an Oilfield Helping Hands shooting event last week with some team members and some customers. Great event. We had a great time. We were helping with charity. It's another place to sort of shake hands. And again, I think if you think of the daisy chain of people that might know that you're looking and what your skills are and where you fit, I think that that's really important. And I think because the industry is in a place now where I would call it sort of precision hiring. So bulk hiring is like, bulk hiring was like, oh my gosh, we need to replace 10% of our staff or 20% of our staff, or we're growing.
Right.
Give me 5 salespeople, give me 5 engineers. To me, it feels very precise right now that we're talking about very specific types of people, right? We want
someone that can wear different hats, or we want someone that's very.
That's right. I need a guy or a gal, that's a team builder, or I need someone that is, can do this type of production engineering, or I need this reservoir engineer. And I see a lot more precision talk, and I think that lends itself much more to our social networks and being able to say, hey, I met a guy the other day, or I met a girl the other day, a young lady the other day that I think would be a great fit for this. And so I would really, you mentioned some things, you need to have a digital presence, because that's where people are going to sort of fact check that personal reference, right? Hey, JP told me that you might be a good fit. They're not going to call you straight away. They're going to go find your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, it's like getting set up on a date.
Exactly.
There's no more blind dates. You can always go on and look who that person is. And also, like, going back to that, just reaching out to someone. I mean, there doesn't have to be a goal when you're reaching out to someone. I've got after this podcast, I have someone come to the office for a coffee that I've never met before, and they have a job, they have a role, they just want to meet, and I think that's. What's the goal of it? I don't know. It's just to meet someone. And that's the thing. It's not like, okay, well, I'm going to call William because he's a potential opportunity for me and I just need to establish. No, I'm going to call William just because I heard him on the podcast. I just want to introduce
Right.
myself, say hello. Because
Yeah.
you never know where that spider web of connections or your network can take you. So you don't have to have a goal to talk to someone. You can really
Absolutely.
just pick up the phone, shoot the shit, call it a day, learn about that person. And if you ever talk to them again, great. If not, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're
Yeah.
still putting yourself out there and you're getting more comfortable speaking to people.
Absolutely. I would tell you one of the other sort of tips that I would give people that I've done is there are people that are in my constellation or my sort of network of colleagues that I've actually set up on my calendar quarterly lunch events with on
Okay.
my personal things. So I have people that I met at Accenture that I think very highly of. I have people at Microsoft that I met that I think very highly of. That I met them actually when they were doing projects for me at, for instance, Halliburton or whatever. They were
Yeah.
actually vendors, but I thought very highly of these people as professionals. And I also, in fairness, I enjoy their company a little bit. And so to not lose track of them, I have these quarterly recurring deals that'll pop up and I'll ping them and go, hey, it's time again. They may be, yeah, it's time again to meet with William,
This
but
guy.
yeah, but
Well,
everybody's kind of up for that.
But what's great about that, I mean, you're networking not just in strictly in oil and gas. You're
That's right.
also kind of being an industry advocate because you're meeting with people
Yeah.
in these tech industries and all that stuff, and you are representing the oil and gas industry,
Yep.
and you're making these friends, these connections. That it's again, we focus on being an industry advocate on the show, and we can get into that if you want. But I think having those reaching out to people that aren't in your bubble
That's right.
is beneficial.
Yeah, and I think that for me too, don't think that just because someone was a vendor or a supplier to you that they're always going to be that way.
Right.
That supplier may be the person that opens the door for your next job. And so look for people though that you think highly of, that you have something in common with. Don't worry about what their title is.
Yeah.
I think that titles are almost disposable now if you look at LinkedIn. So everybody is like, chief executive officer of my personal house and brand.
Yeah. They really.
Looking for people that are smart, have common interests. These are the people that are going to go far and take you with them. So as much as we talked about digital, if I were to sort of sum that up, get your personal network organized, force yourself to go meet with people and have coffee, find something to talk about with people in your professional constellation,
Right.
Your network. They are going to help you. Like, you don't have to ask them. They know you're looking for a job.
Yeah, I mean, they know why you're there. They know why you're tagging up with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's obviously get online digital presence, try to get out there to the industry events and try to meet and talk to people. But what about skill sets or personality traits that
Yeah.
you think? Do you think so? For example, for a company like Halliburton or one of these Schlumberger big companies,
Sure.
it was the company brand that mattered the most. The boys
Yep.
in blue, whatever it was. I feel like now through the influx of LinkedIn and digital marketing presence, it's kind of been pushed down to where the personal brand reflects the company brand
Yeah.
rather than kind of vice versa how it was before.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that
I
make
think,
sense?
I think that the brand of your company means a lot. I sort of disagree with the notion that people don't matter. What I would say is for many years, particularly from the investment side of the industry, we heard a lot that capital allocation matters, technology matters. People are uniform across the industry. There are good and bad people, so that's not a differentiator. And
Right.
I sort of wholeheartedly disagree with that. And so I think people absolutely do matter. And they need to fit your culture, and your culture needs to fit them because they are your brand.
Right.
And I think the people are your brand every time you're out there. And so I think that's important. If I meet you and I look at your resume, JP, and I go, okay, he went to A&M, he did this, he did that. I think once we're sort of past that, that's only 20% of the conversation for me. I want to know, hey,
And that's not really who I am.
exactly. So I want to know who you are because I want to know, how you're going to be reflecting my brand and my values when I meet with customers because those values matter and they matter over, when you're building sustainable relationships. The moment we start thinking that a business is all about capital allocation and the people don't matter, I think that is, that gets us in a place that we don't really want to be. So if you're out there, work on your brand, work on who you are. So if you don't have people out there sort of saying, hey, I know Joe, and he's this kind of person, I think you haven't built your brand. And
Yeah.
by the way, you want that to be reasonably good things.
Yeah.
You want them to say, hey, this person is honest, is trustworthy. Probably one of the highest compliments you can get paid is that person's a problem solver.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a problem solver, we don't always like what they bring to the table, but they're always bringing new solutions and ideas. And even for the BD staff that I have work for me now, I really encourage them to bring me new ideas, even when they're sometimes they're crazy. But I think that that's what we're looking for in the modern workforce, right? Because the business is going to be changing so fast. We need to be flexible and adaptable, get the values and sort of core attributes of the person right, and then sort of encourage them to grow out of that and be free thinkers, and you'll be very successful.
I mean, I think at this time, I mean, there's been so many people that are either kind of hesitant or really not sure how to promote their brand. There's also another pushback of companies not trusting their employees to post something or publish something or engage in something or to put to begin doing their personal brand, which to me I think that's ridiculous, because in this day and age when it's not like there's no cell phones, it's not like there's no social media platforms, it's not like there's any podcasts. I think companies in this day and age really kind of have to push down the trust and allow their employees to develop their online brand.
Yeah. When we talked earlier about when we looked at this year, and again, Bill and I worked on, what is our marcom plan for this year? There was a word that sort of rose to the top there when we talked about, and we brought in some younger people, just so you know, too. So we have our homelanders and millennials helping us too, what makes digital content engaging, right? And this one word that rose to the top was it has to be authentic. And so if it's not authentic, if you're letting your company post through your profile their corporate jargon, you're making a huge mistake.
Yes.
So it will be much more engaging, and honestly, it's just better all around if your content and you're authentic. If you personally don't match the branding of your company, I think there's some introspection required there as well too. So, what would you post that your company would be disappointed with, right? And so I would say make sure brand is very authentic. I like you have a very professional setup here, JP. This is beautiful. I love the sort of from scratch videos. If you look at some of the videos that we made and put online this year, literally they're not professional, right? We said, look, I want you walking through the shop with an iPhone, catching people doing what they're doing, and we're just going to stop and talk and ask to them and say, tell me what's going on here. Oh, we're winding a motor. We did some interviews with our CEO the same way, completely unscripted. I did put the company ball cap on him because I've got marketing in my title.
I get it. It's your title now.
But yeah, we were like, stand by this generator and we're just going to ask you questions. And he was asking, what if I say something wrong? Look, being authentic is really important. So
and I think through the authentic, whether it's audio visual stuff, whether it's podcasts, whether it's you got to just come across. I mean, look, you're CEO for a reason. So just talk about it. But people are so hesitant. It's like, well, this is going to be permanent. This is going to be. First off, there's so much clutter out there. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there. So many that it's going to get lost. You know what I mean? As long as obviously you don't say you shouldn't say something offensive, obviously.
Of course.
But I mean, at the same time, I mean, you're a CEO, you're a person. I mean, we want to get to know the person. That's kind of what this podcast is about, is to get to know the person behind the position. So I think you're right. You got to be genuine. You got to be authentic.
I would tell you just quickly, because this is kind of funny. So we have a test well in Angleton where we run a lot of testing facilities, huge 1.5 megawatt generator. So we've done a lot of that around. And a few times after we've had some marketing, I've had someone from our engineering team come to me with some technical correction, it sort of pulled me to the side, William, the well is not 10,000 feet. I'll be like, okay, so
9,850.
Yeah, it's 12,271 to the top of the Packer, but the cement's at 69 and the Schlumberger log's at 67. Look, just be authentic, right? You're not lying. It's okay if you don't know exactly, right? The generator doesn't have to be 1.2365 megawatts. Exactly. So 1.5 megawatts.
That works for me.
And that's what I think what people want to know is that it's going to be truthful and authentic. And so I would sort of stick that brand. If you're branding, we kind of switched to marketing now, but I think even personal marketing, I think that authenticity is just absolutely essential. And you'll be shocked how much more engagement you get from an unprofessional video versus something you paid $50,000 to get produced.
I can attest that we haven't spent any money on getting videos out here, but I mean, I'll have my daughter up here. I'll make some funny videos around the Rotary where she's like kind of picking up and cleaning. Like it's like they don't do like a Roughneck Jerry one. That's just using Snapchat. So it's one of those things where it's just like it's whatever comes from the hip, whatever it doesn't matter the quality of it. And that's also another thing too that I just thought about. I may be full of shit right now, but I'm trying to think. It's like there's so many personalities in our industry. There's so many good people in our industry. Everyone has a story, and the majority of people I know care, and I think the more personal brands, whatever you want to call it, that get out there, it's going to begin leaking over to other industries, or it's going to begin leaking over. It's not just going to be this person at Schlumberger. It's going to be
Yeah.
this name at Schlumberger. Oh, they're also, get involved here. They volunteer. So I think as an industry advocate stance, I think it only helps our group in our oil and gas industry.
Yeah, I think we
Personally,
definitely need to do a better job personifying ourselves because those that are not favorable towards the industry
yeah,
like to depersonalize what we're
yeah,
doing here. And I think to your point, I haven't met anybody in oil and gas. Now maybe I met you and I'm wrong, but I haven't met anybody in oil and gas that doesn't care about the environment, that
amen,
doesn't care about their neighborhood, that doesn't care about every
yeah,
single thing that's happening. And I think the more that we can sort of expose that, that hey, we're members of the community and we care too,
I completely
right? Some
agree.
of these things have very difficult technical challenges, as you know, right? And so it's not as easy as saying that you're on one side of this or the other. I think it's about improving and sort of not having torrid political conversations, but getting to the facts and getting to the problems. But a lot of the future is going to be built on oil and gas.
Yeah,
And I mentioned to you earlier that I think that it's really incumbent upon us, to make sure that we don't go extinct, right?
and
That
how do
we,
we do that?
yeah, I think very challenging, right? So, wow, put me on the spot. How do we do that? So, well, I'm
Right.
going to meet with
This is the toughest questions here.
Mr.
Running the
Bernard Looney.
Rotary.
When Mr. Bernard Looney from BP contacts me, this is what I tell him. So, I think it starts with having this more sustainable attitude, right? I think being, cash is important. So I went to business school like most everybody else did and had lots of big corporate training. Cash is important, but I think we have to look at, are we creating value? Are we creating value for not just for our shareholders, but for our other stakeholders, our employees, the environment, our communities? A little bit longer horizon hurts. So this business is built on boom and bust. I don't even know how many I've been through. I'm not the oldest person in the industry either, but I've been through a lot.
It all
And
turns to Groundhog Day after a while.
yeah, it does. And I think a little bit more sustainable attitude would really benefit us, right? In terms of, having projects that, are able to operate at a range of prices. You know, committing to employment practices that, build strong engineers, strong leaders, strong business development people, instead of everybody trying to, cannibalize and pay a little bit more to hire the right person
Yeah,
when things are booming, only to get rid of the person when
right.
they're off. So, even very early in my career when I was at Schlumberger and we went through the first downturn, it really struck me that, when we were super busy, it was very difficult to pull us off the rigs to send us to school to learn new tools and safety. And I was like, well, when it's not busy, why don't you just send us on? We'll just do all that stuff, and then when the
Yeah.
market goes back up. But I think a little bit more of that thinking. I know that's very difficult if you own a business to do that, but I think we do need to look at longer term values in what we're doing, and not just racing and trying to not be the last one to have our pan in the water for the gold rush, but trying to come here and responsibly develop and be responsible to our industry.
I mean, that's the thing. You made a good point. I mean, unfortunately, the oil and gas industry is not. It's depersonalized. It's
Yeah,
these big giant buildings and suits that come in and communities and just spill oil, throw some dirt on it, leave. I mean,
yeah,
it's the very 1970s, 1980s view of us. And I think the conversations we need to be having aren't these. You need us. We're here at the table because you need us. You need us, whether you like it or not.
yeah.
That mug you're drinking, those hydro, those earphones, you need us. That's not gonna. That's all you're gonna do. What is it called? You're putting people in their own camps. They're gonna
Yeah.
dig in harder. They're dig their heels in harder and view us as an enemy or a villain, which is ridiculous. And what you brought up a very good point is the conversations we need to be having is that, hey, we're at the table because we're a part of your community.
That's
We're
right.
here. We're not here because you need us and we support oil. No, like yes, of course we support oil. We're in the industry, but it's a we're part of the community. We're your neighbor. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? We sit next to you in church. We coach your kids' team. Like we are your community.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think we're contributors. I think that the two we get, I have a real passion around technology, and people, don't really. I certainly didn't understand, nor did I have any sort of favorable public messaging before I took my job with Schlumberger on the limits that we've pushed in oil and gas and what we've brought to the world. Here in Houston, if you drive down 59 on the right side in Sugar Land, there's a building there for Farfield, right? It used to be next to where one of our offices was at KSI. At one point in time, they had the largest computer on the planet processing geophysical data for the oil and gas industry. And
Oh,
so, again, I think we talk about, well, Accenture and Microsoft and Oracle, really, one of the early promoters of, multinodal large scale computing is the oil and gas industry. And so, we're really essential to the future. From what I can see, my view is, there's not a future in renewables without us, right? We're the people that know how to manage huge multi-billion dollar projects that last 20 years, right? If you want to bring highly, scaled technology to a field or a harsh environment, we're the people that are going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think instead of, like you said, putting us in camps, it needs to stop being either or, and let's have a conversation about both.
Yes.
Right? We can have a conversation about using methane in the Permian to fire generators, to create electricity, to run ESPs and frac trucks, or put it back on the grid.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of new technology out there. I mean, we can go on and on about that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's to me, it's the news. It's
Yep.
the news. It's all this stuff you read online. It's fossil fuels versus. It's
Right.
like, dude, I haven't met one. Let's get them out of here.
Yeah.
Let's just have a realistic conversation about this.
I have news for you too. If you have a geothermal well, we will sell you all the equipment to take care of that geothermal well.
There we go. You heard it here first. But that's the thing, though. It's not one of those things where it's like it's not an either or conversation. And I don't know why.
Definitely.
I don't know how all of a sudden it's become that, and but it's not that. But again, I blame that on mainstream media. I blame that on the news. I blame it on these clickbait articles that people have that get people fired up and get people kind of clumped in their own camps.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's not that conversation. There needs to be more of a gray area, more conversations happening.
Right.
About that. So.
Whew, blood pressure boiling hot on future of oil and gas.
I know. What else you want to bring up right now while we're sitting around here?
Man, I don't know. You've got a diverse audience. So
we do.
We talked about hiring. We sort of talked about history and technology. I guess I would, talk a little bit more about the future, but I think we have a lot to be optimistic about. So I think a lot of people, you might have some people out there that have been looking for a job for a while. Maybe they're thinking about leaving oil and gas. Maybe they're tired of the negative connotations of what we're doing. Maybe they're concerned about the sustainability of the future. I would definitely encourage those people to reconsider that. I think oil and gas or energy. Maybe we'll start calling it energy. Yeah, energy really has a future for those people. And if they give us a chance to have a more sustainable outlook, there's a place. We need lots of talent.
Yeah.
And at least for me, I'm very concerned about the talent gap. Before the show we were talking about, so I have a daughter that's in oil and gas.
Right.
She followed me in oil and gas. And so I get a little bit more of a younger person's perspective of, I went to college and I worked hard and I was told that if I did this, I came out and I would get a good job.
Yes.
And
it's not like that anymore.
Yeah. Well, we gave him the good job and then we laid him off.
Yeah. Welcome. Later.
So I think that, it's really important that we continue to create engagement with those younger professionals, whether they're, blue collar professionals or white collar professionals, whether they're in accounting and HR or whether they're engineers from A&M or LSU working on our jobs. So I think that's a serious consideration for the industry that we should spend some time on.
Spend some time on the generation coming in and the younger generation.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now, the tendency is it's fairly easy, as you pointed out. We have a slightly oversupplied job market.
Right.
It's fairly easy to go and pick up people that have quite a bit of experience that are mid or late career. I'd encourage listeners, go find some young people. I know for me, they're some of the most valuable people in our organization at Access ESP. They were when I was at larger companies too. Bring them into the sort of boardroom meetings.
Because here's the deal. You have a very good point. I mean, once the older generation leaves, because they have a lot of field practical, logical experience that they've got pretty much from boots on the ground or seeing something happen time and time again. When the younger generation, there's that knowledge when it comes to technology side of things, such as this new technology, whether it's Corva or whether it's these other programs that that they can understand and know how to work. It's second nature.
Absolutely.
So there should be some sort of knowledge transfer, not only to help the older generation understand all this new technology that's being pumped down their throat, but also for the younger generation to have that practical knowledge that they haven't had the opportunity to see. 75 wells being drilled in this formation, and we got to do this at this level. So there's such an opportunity to share the newer and older knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think often we're so worried about transferring what we know to the next generation, and we forget that they have a lot to transfer to us too.
Yeah.
And these generational differences are pretty stark. The people above me, the boomers, so they were introduced computers in their career, right?
Yeah.
So they spent most of their academic lives and certainly childhoods without computers. If you're an Xer, you were introduced to computers in elementary or junior high. We're comfortable with it. We're savvy. But we're not expert. You move into the millennials and the homelanders, which now make up, I think, almost half of the workforce in oil and gas. They've never been without it, never been without a smartphone. And so on one side, you have people that say, I don't even understand why I need this stupid computer in my hand and what's Facebook. And you have people on the other side, bringing other things. So
how do you not know how to work?
I would say this. I broke down the other day and we set up an Instagram account for the company. So I didn't have Insta, and the guys came to me and said, this is where are we at, man? People are trying to follow, and I was like, I'm totally confused. So somebody explained to me why I need Instagram when I have Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And anyway, I was educated, and so again, you got to give them a chance. They know what they're talking about, and
dude, I run 4 Instagram pages right now. It's like, oh my gosh, it's fun, but it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Someone that dislikes social media, seeing all that stuff, it's part of the game though.
Yeah.
It's part of marketing.
Yeah.
Right now.
So next time you have someone that wants to run an email campaign, bring in one of your millennials or homelanders and ask them what they think about that.
But that's the thing, though. You need to have that. I mean, the traditional way of marketing oil and gas is it's changing. It's changing right before our eyes. It's we're talking about building a personal brand. That's also marketing right there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you work at a certain company that's drill bit service, whatever, and I'm seeing your personal brand, you're also selling the company. So it's evolved. I mean, whether it's these boring white papers where it's like, oh, this percentage, that's boring, But now you're seeing more of whether it's podcasts, skits, memes, different ways, giveaways.
Yeah.
You're finding these new innovative ways to get views, clicks, traffic, and engagement. And I think it's pretty cool. And that's the thing. There's no playbook right now. It's just you just got to try stuff out and go with it. Obviously, you got to be a little bit responsible with it, but you just got to kind of trust your team, trust yourself, definitely. And just go with it.
Yeah. Again, if it's authentic, I think you'll find an audience.
Absolutely.
And you'll represent your brand well.
Absolutely, I agree. Well, William, I appreciate you coming in.
Sure,
again,
my pleasure.
This is William Standiford, the VP of Sales and Marketing, the man of many hats of Access ESP, where 90% of his work comes global, which he can't get to any of his customers right now. But eventually, hopefully soon you can.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I think in a couple months, hopefully things kind of go back to whatever new environment we're into. But I appreciate you coming in again.
My pleasure.
This is William Standiford with Access ESP. You can find him on now on Instagram, or you can find Access ESP on Instagram, or you can reach out to him on LinkedIn, or you shoot me a message and I can put you all in contact. I appreciate you coming on, and
sure.
I wish you the best, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch and chat with you soon.
All right, fantastic. Thank you,
buddy.
JP.
We'll talk to you soon.